Good morning, everyone. Happy Juneteenth. Before I start, I want to tell you that we had a horrible storm last night. We lost power for a while. My garden is a hot mess. And the neighbor, let's see if you can see it, lost a big tree. While that tree was crashing down and I could hear it, I was scooping up a puppy. The husband was grabbing the lawnmower, and we got another storm coming in right now. So I've got to make this as quick as possible. Anyway, Juneteenth. To all of the MAGA out there who think that they are superior because they are white, you need to learn a little bit of what woke and DEI actually mean. Being aware and empathetic to people's struggles, their history of struggles, the history that this country was built by slaves. Is very important to remember. The regime that we are under is trying to take as much as they can away from everybody but white men. They are trying to erase women's history, black history, indigenous people's history, our immigrants of Hispanic and Latino history. Anybody they're trying to take history away from but white men. So I think this Juneteenth is so important. Teach your children how to be empathetic, how to understand, how to defend those that people are going after. I'm going to tell you a story. When I was the activity director at a nursing facility, we had 2 black residents, just 2. The lady, she had dementia and she really couldn't hold a conversation with you. She could still play bingo, she still knew things, but as far as having a conversation, you know, you would have to really draw it out of her. Her daughter told me her history because I went to her and I said, listen, I want to know more about your mom. And she said her mom worked like 3 to 4 jobs to support her children. She always taught Christianity. She always made sure that everybody was taken care of before herself. And she worked her butt off. Because you have to understand, at the time that these people grew up, they grew up when rights were given. So they felt a little different than what the black kids that I grew up did. They had more. But anyway, the second person, black man, he worked for the city all his life, retired from like the maintenance of the city that we were at, which is really a town in my opinion, but it's considered a city. So he worked and retired and was just a super nice guy, always very polite, even when he was hurting, when he didn't feel good. He never treated the girls bad, the CNAs or the nurses. So I wanted to represent and have a day that everybody could enjoy, but have it focused on black history. And so I had a soul food luncheon. And I served all kinds of soul food. I did the wings as the scraps from the kitchen. And then we started talking about soul food. Now you have to understand, we live in rural Indiana. And out here, racism is just a part of life. They use the N word. I mean, they don't care out here. They still don't. Heck, they don't even think women should have the rights that we have. But whatever. I deal with it. And trust me, they don't like dealing with me. I don't care. So at the soul food luncheon I had, I started talking about what soul food was and the true meaning of soul food as being the scraps of the masters that the slaves actually turned into these dishes, this food that they lived on. And I looked over at the black guy. I'm not going to say his name. I can't without like crying. And he has tears running down his face. And this was while I was giving my talk, and I was like, okay. So I just kept talking and talking, and then we started having the conversations. And the conversations, and I actually got the black lady to talk about what her daughter told me, that like her grandparents helped with um, the Underground Railroad on the Ohio River right here where we were. And so I had her start talking about those stories. And some of my residents, of course, had dementia and so on and so forth, but some of them actually sat and listened. And a lot of them are racist. Like they didn't want to sit next to her, or they didn't want to sit next to him, or you're letting a black man go before me, but whatever. That was the kind of mentality. And pardon me, hold on. And I know it's not funny, but sometimes they were really rude, and I would correct them. We're not living in that time anymore. We cannot talk to people that way. Please do not. And so I would chart on it. So if my residents had racist behavior, I would chart on it. So that way, other activity directors that came after me or worked with me, or the doctors that would read charts, or the nursing that would read the charts, they would see that they're a little more racist than, just whatever. But anyway, the conversations started, and we talked, and I let them speak, but he still had tears running down his face. So when I walked over him, I was asking him if he needed anything else to eat or drink or anything. And he grabbed my arm and he says, I want to thank you. He said my name. He said, Miss my name. And he said no one had ever recognized that in his presence ever in his life. This man was, oh my gosh, he had to be like 88, 90. I mean, he was old. I mean, he was still mentally sharp. And he said that no one had ever recognized them before in his presence. That was the first time that man ever felt like his history mattered. If that's what you call woke, then sign me up 5 times, 100 times. Because when he felt that someone understood, had empathy, and told the history as it was, even if it was just about the soul food, and then it brought in the other topics and the railroad, the Underground Railroad with her. If that's all that made that man cry, could you imagine what getting rid of all of this racism and white supremacy would be like here? At 90 years old, he had never been recognized, and he had never seen anyone recognize his history until that moment. And I think it did kind of change a few of the other white residents, because I did have a white resident that constantly would say, oh, I can't sit next to her. She's black. She stinks. All kinds of, I mean, they're mean. And when they got older, they felt more emboldened that they could say whatever they wanted to. And they were mean to these 2 residents all the time. But in that moment, there was a little bit of recognition from each one of those residents that still had their faculties, that were listening to the conversations. You need to have these conversations. You need to have conversations with your kids. You need to let them hear the history and why it's so important, why Juneteenth is so important to our country, why it is a federal holiday, and why it should be celebrated. Because that is the biggest stepping stone ever in our country. And yet people are trying to discredit other races right now in this country. We are ran by white supremacists, white Christian nationalists, Nazis. And all it does is take one moment to be nice to someone or kind. And that Soul Food Luncheon was probably the most important luncheon I ever had with my residents. I did all kinds of stuff. I would do Greek Day. I would do all kinds of stuff, and I would go to, there was a Greek restaurant, and they would set me up with platters so that way I could do Greek stuff. But the Soul Food Luncheon touched one person and made him feel good about who he was and that his history was being talked about. Take away woke, take away DEI, and we're back to some sort of. It's amazing that these people want to take us back. Y'all have a great day. Hugs from a distance. Go have some soul food. Make some soul food. Talk to your kids. Y'all have a great day.